Hey, everybody. I want to thank you for investing in the Shareholders podcast. Once again, guys, we have an amazing show coming up for you guys. I'm really excited, man. We're trying to hit the hot topics, you know what I mean? And fortunately, I know people who could talk on these topics. And so I'm a part of a lot of different organizations. I'm also a part of a truck club / car club, but we kind of prefer trucks, if you will. So when I saw this topic, I called the guys up, see if they come on, and they took some time to do so. Mr. Lazar Norwood, how you doing, sir?
Hey, great, my friend. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. And then, of course, Mr. Jonathan Dalton. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Good to see you.
All right. So we're going to get in this now. This originated really because of a headline I saw where they were talking about EV vehicles, electric vehicles, and the rise in them, and there's going to kind of now be a real push. There is a push, but now there's really a push. President Biden, Joe Beasy, signed into action that he wants by, now see, I just had my notes. Now, why am I missing this? He wants by 2030?
Yeah, 2030.
Right. Oh, here we go. I got it. I'm sorry. Biden seeks to make half of new U.S. auto vehicles electric by 2030. So half the vehicles he wants in about 9 years to be on the road are electric. Now, just coming from where, we come from, we're all old enough. We're born in the height of the boom. We were all pretty much born in it. We didn't really work in it, but a lot of our parents or uncles or whatever literally work auto plants, where we're from, Michigan, huge auto town. And so, building these vehicles that, basically were the heart of the auto industry for years, especially in the Midwest. Trucks and all that. I remember, I'm old enough to remember that the controversy used to be foreign vehicles, just getting a foreign vehicle at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys remember that, but like to have a Toyota or a Nissan, especially in an auto town was a big deal. Does anybody else remember that? Do you guys remember?
Oh, absolutely. I remember growing up. If you didn't have a parent, there was an uncle, an aunt, somebody that you knew they worked at General Motors, and they were faithful General Motors purchasers. It didn't matter whether it was a pickup. It was a Cadillac town. I mean, I hate to say it, but you got a lot of folk that worked at General Motors. No disrespect. They had a $100,000 house, but $100,000 in Cadillacs. So I mean, it was. That's just what it was. But I remember growing up, and that was my thing to do growing up. Was on a Saturday, if you wasn't riding your bike all day, 8 hours a day like a job, I would literally walk or catch the bus over to Pennsylvania Avenue. And I would start at Mitsubishi and work my way all the way down, go to Cadillac, Toyota, and I would just spend hours just looking at cars. And I remember when Toyotas like really first started getting big. In fact, my uncle, my dad's oldest brother, I remember when he bought a Camry and it was like 92. Like, you work at General Motors. Like, what kind of what's the relationship here? Like, you disrespecting the brand. But I mean, as time went on, I mean, foreign automakers, they had proven that they were making higher quality cars at lower prices. So, I mean, it was inevitable for people to start, purchasing, foreign vehicles.
JD, you got a story?
Yeah.
With that?
I've seen here in Vegas even that the union halls will say American vehicle parking only. So like the rivalry's still there. Yeah, wow. Here in Las Vegas, I think more so probably in Michigan and Ohio and our bigger states that are doing production for vehicles.
I'll see. I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it was like a carpenter's union hall. And then also I still remember like the vehicle rivalry when I was working at General Motors for a while. One time I didn't have my own vehicle. I was borrowing my parents, and all that was available was my dad's Ford F-150. And that was like the scandal of the plant. You know, when I walked in, everyone's like, "You're going to be lucky if that's not on bricks when you get off the shift," you know?
Yeah.
So, it's real.
I remember that was a real thing. I used to hear stories like a guy bring in a Honda Accord or something, and it had a nick in it, or it had a scratch in it when he came off the shift, you know, where it just wasn't done. And I literally grew up 2 blocks down from the plant. And I remember I would go to school and we'd go over the bridge and I would look down, and back then it was the Pontiac Grand Ams they were making. I would see like rows and rows of these new Grand Ams. And it just was every day going to school, every day as a kid. And so, which translated to me now because, you know, I've never it wasn't like purposely doing it, but I've always had a General Motors vehicle. I've always driven trucks. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I always kind of had a bias with the trucks. Like, I didn't mind Honda Accords. Like, my mother had an Accord at some point. She drove that. I got used to foreign cars, but I never truly, I was like, I don't know about a foreign truck. I was like, yeah. Now, of course, full transparency, Jonathan Dalton is a Ford F-150 driver.
Yep.
Despite that, he is still my brother. Okay? Despite that, he is still my brother. Of course, I'm the GM side. I have a Silverado, of course.
They're great trucks, though.
Mr. Norwood is a family man, of course, now. But so I want to transition and ask you guys, because again, I honestly don't think that for young people this is a big deal. But, you know, we're all over 30, you know what I'm saying? You know, 40, getting up there. What do you feel about the now real surge and push? We're not just talking about the little cars, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but this surge and push toward electric vehicles. Does it feel like we're losing a little bit of the nostalgia of what, you know, American made, the muscle, and does it feel that way, or are you all right with it?
Me, myself, personally, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. What I have a problem with is affordability. Now, there are little notes myself, and let me pull them up here. So we're going to start all the way back to 1970. The cost of a vehicle in 1970 was around $3,500. You fast forward, and I kind of did it by decade. You go to 1980, you've seen and I don't think people really realize, like, you know, there's a lot of talk right now about inflation. And they're saying, oh, well, the inflation that we're seeing, the rise in prices on stuff is just temporarily. Which when you just look at the cars, for example, so 1970, it was $3,500. You go to 1980, and this is decade by decade. 1980, the average cost was $7,000. You go to 1990, it's at $15,042. So, I mean, there's significant jumps. You get to 2000. 2000, we're at an average of $21,850. And I mean, the leaps. And my biggest thing is when you look at electric cars, okay, if it is what they consider to be affordable now, what they said the average car payment now in America, and this ain't specific to a type of brand, you know, obviously credit and stuff like that plays a play, but the average car payment is around $450 something. That can be anywhere from a Sentra, a Versa, to, you know, depending on the, you know, whether it's a lease, you know, there's a lot of different factors, but it's affordability. Now, would it be a good option? Absolutely, because I'm pretty sure we all share the same mindset. The ridiculousness of these gas prices, I'm tired of it. You go from, you know, we've been from one administration to the one that we're currently in now. They've been bragging for probably the last 7-8 years about the stockpile of, you know, petroleum, gas, and all that we have in the U.S. Well, explain to me why are we paying around $4, close to $4 a gallon? If this is meant to be a benefit to us as, you know, Americans, what's the point of having a stockpile if that's not going to play into, you know, I understand that everything, when it warms up, everything, the prices increase. Housing prices increase because you got more buyers out looking for houses. Gas prices increase to a certain extent because you got more people traveling. Makes sense. But, you know, the biggest thing is I don't see necessarily nothing wrong with it because you're always going to have that I think that level of nostalgia when it comes to muscle cars or classic cars. They'll never necessarily go anywhere, but it's like, will you be able to afford it? You know, Tesla's doing a good job with, I think, with affordability, but on average, your base model, from what I've seen, your base model electric car that's something that you wouldn't mind riding in, we're still talking around 38 to like 45,000, dollar range.
Yeah, no, so, it's not cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with it, but will people actually be able to afford it? Because when you study inflation and the rate of inflation, pay has never kept pace, pays and, it's never kept pace with the rate of inflation. So it's like, it's not a bad idea, but what are you going to do to offset the cost of it? Are employers going to actually start paying better wages? There's a lot of factors to go into it.
Yeah. JD?
In the realm of nostalgia about how this switch would be successful or not, I think of, remember in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when at the beginning when he has like that golden idol and he has the bag of sand, and so he's like, all right, grabs the idol, plops the sand on. And I think that was the transition that like Ford Motor Company, for example, has been implementing, because they knew that probably one of the hardest demographics to crack to get on board with like the EV movement is probably pickup truck owners, and the F-150 being the most sold vehicle, truck and car in North America. It was a significant transition, and those seem to be the people who are most resistant to the electric car movement. However, when they said like your Ford Raptor has 480 horsepower, how about 580 horsepower? Right. And like it was very successful. And I think that when car companies can say we're going to give you more power, more efficiency, more torque, people will be on board. And I think Ford has been an example of someone doing that well. Obviously, Tesla, they've been the popular guy at the high school. And I know in some sports now, they're doing those heart rate monitors so you can kind of watch the standing heart rate of the athletes. I was kind of hoping that we could do that to Lazar, because right now he's probably like 80 beats per minute. But as soon as I start talking about the Ford Bronco flop, it's going to be like 200. He's going to be stressing out. I think it comes down to marketing. I think the technology is there. I think it's just the marketing and getting the American public on board and having the electric infrastructure, because for me, the Ford Lightning videos and emails I'm getting inundated with, because I'm a Ford owner, my only hesitancy is that, what do they call it? Just how far you can travel. When they say like there might be a cap of 400 miles, like I've really gone further than, a couple hundred miles to like Bryce Canyon, Utah or something. But still, there's something inside a truck owner who's always like, yeah, but I want to be able to go to Maine. I want to be able to drive to Mexico City, or you always want that liberty to know. But I don't think the infrastructure is there for over-the-road driving just yet. So I think that's the big hesitancy.
Well, okay, so, man, you guys gave me a couple points. I'm gonna come back, Lazar, because I do have a point about the gas and the affordability. But real quick, JD, you're very right, because we'll get into it now. I used to drive a Hummer. I had a Hummer SUT, and so they announced that they were bringing Hummer back. And I heard an announcement probably a year ago, they're going to bring Hummer back. Then they were like, we're going to bring it back electric. And so, everybody knows I used to have a Hummer. So people started coming up to me and they were like, man, you hear the Hummer's coming back. I was like, wow. And then the next thing they would talk about was always the horsepower. It's like they're talking about 1,000 horsepower every time, which I think is smart, because electric vehicles, there's a stigma that it's little cars and there's no power. But if you're going to give me more power, you know what I'm saying, for the truck that I want to drive, and I feel like I'm not losing and I'm actually gaining, that is a great, I don't know how they're doing that, but yeah, if you're going to give me, I looked it up again on the specs, even the lower version, when they got 800 horsepower, that to me does bridge the gap for people to want to transition. Now, again, the guys that, like you say, want to go from New Mexico to Virginia and all that, I don't know, the readability. We both know Alfonso, or we all know Alfonso. I was shocked. I had a stigma that you still needed this fancy, crazy electric thing to plug up. He showed me his plug is just a regular plug. You just plug it into which shocked me. So now I want to get back to what you said as well, Lazar. Now here's what I'm always worried about. Because like you said, we see how prices are going up. And everybody asked me about that Hummer. And I said, listen, I like it, but I don't have $95,000 to pay for it. And I wonder, because we will be eliminating petroleum and gas. You know, it's like this. I tell people, everybody wants minimum wage to go up. Okay, I'm making $7.50, you're making $7.50. Minimum wage goes up to $15. One of us is going to be out of a job because they're not going to, you know what I'm saying? They're not paying both of us. So I wonder if the car prices will go up to try to compensate for the loss of money that will be from not, you know, selling gas. I just wonder about that. You guys think that's a way they're going to try to recoup some of this money off the front end?
Honestly, I think, you know, economics plays a major role in it. And what these big corporations and big businesses are great at doing, you know, you get certain programs, like, for example, this is kind of off the subject, it's more of a housing thing. You know, Housing Act, I think it's Housing Act 1949 or 1950, something like that. That was the biggest push in America to boost homeownership. And I think at the time, you could build a home for, it was less than what you were able. It was like somewhere between $3,000 or $5,000. I mean, you know, numbers aren't exact, but it was ridiculously low. And over time, as the decades increased, it started off as a program, which most of these programs do. It was a great program to boost home ownership, but as time goes on, they figure out ways to make it transition it from a program that's good for the public to a program that's good for the dollar. You know, so I personally think that ultimately what's going to happen is, you know, the biggest industry that's going to be under fire is really not even the car industry, it's the gas and petroleum. You know, though they've been making a killing for decades I think their biggest profit years have been from the 90s all the way up to, you know, current date. So it's going to be up to them to figure out how to, if anything, I personally feel they're going to invest a lot of money into slowing up the progress of, you know, and which would ultimately kind of give them enough time to be able to figure out ways to, you know, become profitable, you know, in that particular, you know, electric car industry. They'll figure out a way, because at the end of the day, they don't really care about sustainability. It's all about the dollar. It's all about, you know, how can we, you know, okay, the market is going into this direction. How can we transition our company to be viable 20 or 30 years from now? They don't look to the next year. They're looking at, you know, at a minimum the next decade or more. How can we stay sustainable with all these changes? It's all about the money at the end of the day.
G.
I guess that's how they afford, you know, all the Saudi princes with their Mercedes Benz that are encrusted in diamonds, right? Because the infrastructure for fossil fuels is still very strong, because when people own like Exxon, Chevron, Sunoco, Phillips, those are very high dividend paying stocks because the technology is there. They've built their rigs, they've built their plants, and all they're doing is just, you know, bringing up the fossil fuels, bringing up oil and they're allowed to pay a lot of those profits out to shareholders because they're not really building as much as they're just sustaining what they've already built. And a lot of the prices for gas are very artificial, you know. And I remember hearing a funny story. Like my dad, he retired out of General Motors, and he would talk about how the engineers would talk about they had carburetors back in the 90s that were giving us like 35 miles to the gallon. But the oil companies would just buy up the patents because they just said, man, that kind of fuel efficiency is going to, you know, that's going to, you know, be against our bottom line financially. So I think that once politically, they do set these kind of goals for the auto industry, the engineers are just going to jump on board and get it done. Like, for example, when there was a lot of incentive for Moderna and Pfizer and a lot of these pharmaceutical companies to build a vaccine, they had like the perfect platform, you know, to, as a private company, to take advantage. And I think the electric car movement is going to be kind of the exact same thing. The American economy will jump on board and take advantage. There's a lot of money to be made. And the oil companies, there's still plenty of uses. It's very cheap to pump. So there's still going to be plenty of uses. It's going to be a while before we're going to trust like solar powered airplanes, for example, or heavy earth moving equipment construction. So there's still going to be a lot of vehicles, especially consider developing markets, South America, Central America. Africa and Eastern Asia. There's a lot of places where it's going to be a long time before people are using electric vehicles. So there's still plenty of use for oil. So I just think, the American economy will catch up with the demand.
One thing I want to add.
Go ahead.
One thing I want to add to now, I say over the last year myself, like I have interest in electric vehicles, but they don't interest me because, like JD said, one of the biggest factors for me is, okay, I got 4 kids. There's 6 of us. There ain't too many vehicles that will hold 6 people. So my thing is, over the course of the last year, I've been looking, and there's a market that a lot of people potentially overlook. So, for example, I looked at Yukon. They have I think it's an eco diesel version, and I think for me the biggest thing is, if I want to go somewhere that requires a plane, I mean, we're talking about 2 mortgage payments for plane tickets nowadays for all these people. So I looked at, they have I would love to do an electric vehicle, but right now there's only really kind of like 2 markets. It's either the pickup market or, the smaller compact car market. But General Motors, they have a eco diesel version of the Yukon. This thing it's like close to 600 miles on 1 tank. Like a lot of people sleep on. I mean, I used to always, I don't want a diesel, but I get annoyed when I ride past those F-350s that sound like a Mack truck. But it's like, that's it, right? But I think the biggest thing is not just affordability, but like JD said, my thing is, I don't want to drive 200 miles and I got to sit at a speed charger for 20 minutes. And then, I've eliminated the bill of having to pay for gas, but at the same time, I'm still inconveniencing myself because I can't drive, if my destination, the good thing where we're located, you are in driving distance of most, vacation destinations. So if I choose to drive, I can't even drive a full, 400 miles without having to stop. It may be a quick charge, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't want to do that. It's still, so there's still like a silver lining. I mean, there's a small competition, but I don't think that they advertise enough for like eco diesel vehicles and stuff like that. Because really, I honestly think that it would slow down the progression of electric vehicles. But I don't think they do enough advertising. So a lot of people, it's not even an option for them.
I honestly think, the industry, like we're talking about it today, they've been talking about it for 20 years. They know what's coming. They know, like JD said, his father, they had carburetors back then. It's like people, the new computer comes out now with a faster processor. They made that processor 12 years ago. They just held them off. It's about the marketing. And honestly, Lazard, like you said, I feel like when they're really ready, you're going to see these stations popping up more for electric. Oh, guess what? They'll be charging faster. But, they're slowly wanting to. And JD, you made a great point, too, with the international side of it. Like, I remember I went to London, and just in the city streets, I didn't see a lot of pickup trucks. You know what I mean? I saw very small vehicles, people on bikes, people on little scooters, and things like that. It was such a
good public transit too,
and very much so. And sometimes America, we're so with us and our thing that we don't, we're not
independent.
We don't like soccer. You know what I'm saying? The rest of the world is all on these things, and then sometimes I'm like, I wonder what really is, because I feel like those petroleum companies are kind of more looking at the rest of the world in terms of their profit margins and all that. And not that we're not important in America, but, they'll be all right. So real quick, though, I did want to just for a second kind of get into, since it is a vehicle, just for a quick thing, they said U.S. EV sales have been record-breaking so far in 2021. People are getting into it. And Lazard, now, if they came out with an EV minivan, which I'm surprised they haven't yet, because you just made a good point. We got the small car, we got the pickup. We don't really have for the family vehicle yet. Would you be interested in that?
Absolutely not. I say it like this. I'm an SUV guy all the way. Now, when I was a kid, those StarCraft conversion vans. That was a thing that I wanted.
Oh yeah, that's totally different.
I mean, I thought that was, I mean, I was even for a station wagon. Like, I thought that those large Chevy, I was like, man, the things I can do while we go on road trips in the back of them. But as we have progressed, now I will say, I mean, like you brought up London. When we went to London, I mean, I noticed the same thing. Like, even with like even the higher class cars, like for S-Class, for example, you never seen anything. I didn't see any S-Classes that were above a S430, which were V6 models. Mm-hmm. Like over there, like they have a completely different, I mean, even in the job market wise, I mean, they're really more, you know, every country has its pros and cons, but they're really more pro people. Like, you saw a lot of compact cars. You didn't see nothing larger than a Ranger. Like, they're, you know, we're all about access. They're more about practicality. You know, they're what's going to be best financially, and then, you know, as far as moving around, you know, through the streets and stuff like that. But me personally, I just would never go for a van. I mean, I kind of thought about it, I will admit, because I saw a really nice Mercedes van. And I told my wife, I'm like, what do you think of this? She's like, yeah, it's nice. You can drive. You know, and then I snapped back to reality. I'm like, I'm more of a suburban guy. Yeah, like, you know, like even with that, I noticed a couple years back, I flew to the East Coast. So I had some relatives. My nieces were graduating from high school. And so I rented a Suburban, and I was heartaching because I'm like, Lord, I'm about to be spending more on gas. And I was pleasantly surprised because, you know, it's their, you know, with General Motors, it's their regular power plant, as they call it. It's like a 5.3 liter Eco Tech V8 or something like that. I got better gas mileage in that large SUV than I did in my V6 SUV that I own. So it kind of helped me to more, you know, expand my mind. Like, okay, yeah, if I do want a larger SUV, you know, it's not like it was in '90. You get a K5 Blazer and get 5 miles a gallon. Like, they've actually made it to where it's, you know, although it's a larger vehicle, you're not getting terrible. You might not be getting great. You're not getting 25 miles a gallon, but it's more, it's closer to that 20. You know, it's closer to that mark to be able to get that larger SUV. But me, no, to answer the question, no, I just, minivan wouldn't fit.
Yeah, we had to ask it. We had to ask it. Now, so JD, I'll ask you though, would you be open to an electric F-150 or whatever coming down the pike? I mean, you know, they because you know they keep trying to get me to come in, and I don't want to give my truck up because first of all, they don't have anything I want. Number one, I don't really like anything.
Nice truck.
I don't really have any reason for it. But would you be inclined for an electric pickup?
Absolutely. Did you see that frunk on that F-150? Like,
I did.
All the little novelties of popping the front hood, and all you do is store your tools and stuff in there, like all your camera equipment. The Ford Lightning is going to be more powerful than the most powerful Ford Raptor. I mean, I loved like the 1-2 times I drove a golf cart as a kid, like to do that with a 7,000-pound F-150. Why not? Right. I think they did an awesome job marketing it. It's the most powerful F-150 they made. I'd love to get one, but as Lazar brought up earlier, the prices of trucks in the United States, I mean, all vehicles, but especially trucks and SUVs, is enormous, and it doesn't cost that much to produce a vehicle. But as capitalism works, they charge as much as they can. And especially American men, I will say, have a kind of a cowboy complex of like, they've never set foot on a construction site. They've never hauled, they've never towed, but they need an F-150 or they need a Silverado or they need a Sierra or a Tundra, and they need to pay $70,000 to get it. Like, my vehicle's a 2015. The 2021 versions of the exact same vehicle are pushing 70,000. And so my truck only has 104,000 miles on it. So the goal is still get up to 300,000 miles, and then I'll start looking at the electric market. But I'm confident Ford will do a good job with it. Mine was the first series they did with the aluminum bodies. So the curb weight was 1,000 pounds lighter. So it was the best gas mileage on the market for a, you know, full-size pickup truck. I'm real content with the truck. It's been great, but I'm going to have to get another couple of years out of it before I look at electric just to get my money's worth out of the thing.
I wouldn't even, and man, that's a great point. Lazar talked about the inflation. Mine, I had 2014, and I mean, I got a lot of aftermarket stuff that they put on there. It's probably at least today $25,000 to $30,000 more dollars now to buy that truck with all the stuff I got on. I can't believe how high the truck price has gone up. But I'm looking at it now. I was looking at just on GM site that Hummer, that $112,000 Hummer reservations are full. Like you can't even get online. You can't even get in line for it. It's
wow.
Totally. But see, my thing is too, it's kind of like when a new video game system comes out. I don't know if I want the first ones off the lot anyway. Like let me see how it goes first, because people keep asking me and I'm like, I really don't want to. I'm kind of like JD. I still got a lot of driving. I want to get out what I have, but I'd like to just see how it goes. And,
that's a real good point because with I know I used to be like, I say my preteen to mid-teenage years, I was really into cars. Like I had a car collection of brochures. And I remember they used to always say when a new version of a model, that new model year, or say, this is Model X, and then they come out with Model Z, they say always wait till like at least 6 months into that model year, so they can find out, work out the kinks, or they find, because, really they don't, it's just like anything in a test environment. It's exactly that. It's a test environment. They try to do as much testing as possible in real life situations to find out how durable this is. But you really don't get to real until consumers start giving feedback, things start malfunctioning, and they're able to, typically within the first 6 months to 8 months of that model year, that new model year, they're able to work out the kinks. So I don't blame you. And plus, last point, with electric cars, my biggest concern is battery life. I think I was reading something with Tesla to where I think on average they have like I think it's like a 5-year or something like that battery life on their cars, and maybe a little higher, but the price of replacing those batteries is it's still it's almost like it's a nice used car or a nice project car for what it'll cost to replace it. So it's like besides the it's great. You would be eliminating gas or, having to stop and fill up at the pump, but it's one, range, affordability for first, range, and then the life of that battery. Like, would it really be sustainable enough to where, because ultimately with all of us nowadays, like JD was saying, okay, if I'm going to make this investment, because that's really what it is at the end of the day, if I'm going to spend $80,000 on this vehicle, where I am at this point in my life, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, can I get 7 to 10 years out of that car? That's where my mindset is, because you're paying so much for it. On average, if you're coming out the gate, you're financing the whole thing. You're talking about now on average for something that high, you're talking about a 7-year loan. So it's like, can I pay, if I don't pay any extra on it, or put no extra money down, can I go to 7 years, pay for it? And then can I get at least an extra 2 or 3 years to keep paying myself to save up for that next vehicle? Is it going to be that reliable?
Yeah. You bring up a good point too. We haven't really talked about maintenance with these electric vehicles, which I don't. Maybe JD, you got some insight. I don't really know. It's got tires like everything else, all that, but I don't really know much about maintenance for electric vehicles. And like Lazar said, I don't know how much these batteries cost, and like it's nice to have a Rolls Royce till you want to get that oil change, and then but that's a factor as well. Especially for, like you said, we're talking about, most families, 4 or 5 people in a family, if not more, trying to budget, and how long is the life. These are things people got to factor in. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Any other comments you want to get in before we go?
Just to go on what you were just saying, at my job in our vehicle fleet, we did have a couple Silverados that were the hybrids that had the battery in them. And they were both around 60,000 miles, and then the battery cell went out. And so they took them to the shop. We never saw those trucks again. Wow. Like, I don't know how much they were charging to get that replaced, but even though they were only 60,000 miles, they just got rid of them because it was too expensive to repair. Now, these were probably 2007 model hybrids, so a little bit older, but still it goes to show there may be some hidden costs we're not aware of.
Yeah, see, yeah, that's something that gets you on the fine print. But hey, I want to thank my guest today. I've enjoyed this, and hopefully, you guys learned something as well. Again, if you like driving the little Chevy Volt that you got, and they come up with it, then you're probably not even worried about this. But for some of us that like a little more rough and tumble, like JD said, ain't never told nothing, ain't done nothing, but I gotta have 4-wheel drive. You never know. This is important for us as well. So thank you, man, to my man Lazar. Thank you, JD, guys, for coming on. This is the Shareholders Podcast. You know where to find us at Mighty Sharp Network. We need you to like, subscribe to the channel, man. We got another new show. I got a whole new show coming out. By the time you guys see this, please support that as well. But thank you, guys. You know what to do. Always be blessed and stay sharp. Thank you, fellas.
Yes, sir.